Okay, obviously very, very disappointing to come down here and you know not come away with a victory, and that's the frustrating part. I need to own a large part of that. Just we got to come away with points down there in the red zone, especially early. Uh, 1 for 3 in the red zone is not good enough. Um, there's just a lot of things that you wish you could take back, but woulda, coulda, shoulda. We're a 2-2 football team. We got an AFC opponent coming to our place next week, so we're gonna have to quickly learn from this one and be better next time. And with that, I'll take any questions.
Yes, and questions we have indeed. Welcome to another episode of the Believeland Brits podcast. If you are joining us on the live stream this evening on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, etc., please do leave us some comments. We'll try and get through to them as we break down the 23-20 loss to the Falcons later on in the show as well. We have a preview of the Los Angeles Chargers game at First Energy Stadium with Powder Blue Report. Lee from Powder Blue Report will be joining us a little later on to discuss that game. But first of all, folks, just a question of how you are, really. Shaun, let's kick off with you, mate. How are you after yesterday's performance?
All right, mate. My throat sounds a little more healthy than yours, buddy. I think you did a lot of screaming at the TV by the sounds of your dulcet tones this evening, mate. I'm not too bad. Cheers, buddy.
Yeah, I don't know how I'm going to last through 2 hours of this with our Full 10 Yards podcast later on. If you want to hear my voice get really hoarse later on, folks, the Full 10 Yards NFL podcast, I'm pretty sure I'll just be squeaky tones by the end of that. Owain, how are you?
We are who I sort of thought we are. So, I didn't get too disappointed by the game yesterday. Sort of seen it coming. So, it's disappointing. Obviously, it's a game that we should be winning, but it is what it is.
Yeah. And Jen, how about you? Apart from the coughing aside, I think that at least half of the podcast has some sort of lurgy at the moment.
Yeah, it could be better. I've had this illness for about 5 days now. I just want it to leave my body.
Yes, and the same could be said of that performance. So let's crack on with it, shall we? I've sort of put together some faults at the Falcons, of which, we'll just take a quick stab through these more than anything else. So the first one, let's talk about taking what's in front of you, and let's talk about the offense for a second. Now, the offense did leave points on the board. That's unmistakable throughout this. A lot was said, of course, about Stefanski not taking 3 points at the start of the game, and a lot was said about that throughout. But also just on the offense in general, Jacoby Brissett threw for 234 yards, 21 from 35, threw a lot more than what he has done in previous weeks. Obviously, that last second interception as well. Both losses end on a Jacoby Brissett interception, driving down, looking for points late. His best receiver was actually David Njoku, 5 off 7 for 73 and a fumble. That fumble, arguably the momentum turning point early on, even though the Browns did claw their way back. And Donovan Peoples-Jones with 5 receptions from 9 targets as well, 71 yards. Chubb putting in another ton performance, 118 yards off 19 carries and a TD. And Kareem Hunt, 49 yards off 10 carries and 19 yards off 2 receptions. So, first of all, before we really break into too much of the figures, etc., let's talk about the way in which the offense looked. Shaun, something which we said a lot privately last year was all about, being able to take the points when they're there and be able to punch it in. The Browns did not do that yesterday.
Yeah, absolutely. When you get down to the 1 yard line and the 3 yard line, I think that's where 2 of our drives ultimately stalled. You've really got to be cashing in with points, 7s obviously preferably, but certainly 3s. In general terms, I have no issue with going for things on 4th down. I've made that quite clear. But I think obviously you do always have to take the game situation into account, I thought yesterday was always going to be a tricky day defensively with the injuries that we got, particularly up front on the defensive line. And it felt like a game that if we could play from in front, it would obviously be much more beneficial to us. Obviously, always a difficult thing, like I say, after the event when it hasn't quite worked out, to always go back and question it. But like I say, ultimately, when you get down that close, it's just strange, isn't it? You know, we joked last night when Donovan Peoples-Jones made that brilliant catch into the sunlight on the deep ball from Brissett. It was 1st and goal at the 1, and we jokingly said, "Oh well, we've got 4 chances here to sneak this yard, because if we're 4th and 1 anywhere else on the field, we have basically called QB sneak the entire season." And correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think we've failed on one yet. So we always pick up 4th and 1 with a QB sneak. We get to the goal line. You've got 4 opportunities to call that exact same play if you so wish to do so. And for whatever reason, you know, we just don't do it. Inexcusable penalties, inexcusable sacks at the wrong time. Ultimately, there was a lot of commentary last night in terms of, as usual, people really wanting to get at the defence. This game was lost on the offence last night. It wasn't lost on the defence. Yes, it wore down. I'm sure we'll talk about that, certainly in terms of the way that it defended or didn't defend the run. But offensively, this was as poor as we've probably seen so far this year, despite another decent day for Nick Chubb, despite another decent day for a couple of the receivers, as you alluded to. Never felt like a game for me that we really took control of. And ultimately, it was a real disappointment to have at least 11 points left on the field from really, really good positions.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with you there. Owain, my question to you is more of, we've praised Stefanski on this podcast a little bit for, some of the play calling of which he's come out, and quite rightly, I believe, especially when you looked at that first drive, getting it all the way down to the 1 yard line and then sort of stuffing the lines, and just looking at this red zone offense in general. Red zone offense was obviously a massive issue last season. Did you see this as a play calling snafu across the game, or did you see it as a failure of players?
Yeah, I don't think Stefanski takes a lot of blame for anything in my book, especially this season. Like we look at what we said pre-season and where we were going to struggle this season. We all thought it was going to be on offense, and we all thought it was going to be because of Jacoby Brissett. And Stefanski, with his wizardry, has somehow turned Brissett into a top 10 QB over the first 4 weeks of the season. So for people to then turn on him and say his play calling's rubbish and his decision making's rubbish, I think, it's a lot of frustration, and I understand that. Like, I got frustrated last night as well, but to turn on him and say, it's his fault, for me, is absolute rubbish. We wouldn't have won the 2 games without him, because realistically, our offense carried us in the 2 games that we did win, and none of us predicted that would happen. So, and people will debate the early 3rd, 4th down decision to go for it, but then you look at it. How many? I just checked the drive just now. How many offensive coordinators go for 4th and 1 on their own 29 to start the second half at 10-10, and we get a field goal out of it? So for me, that more than cancels out the decision not to take the field goal early on. I've not seen many people actually say anything about that second half decision to go for it. So for me, they employ people much, much, much smarter than me to go over the numbers. And if their decision-making process is telling them it's going to, get them a win 51% of the time, then that's what you do, because you're playing the odds. And I have absolutely no problem with anything Stefanski did yesterday. And you touched on the red zone offense there. We lost by 3 yesterday. Jacoby Brissett missed an easy walk-in Kareem Hunt touchdown on a screen pass. We'll remember it as the screen pass that looked horrendous in the red zone at one point yesterday. But I seen Jake Burns put a still shot of that play having developed earlier on Twitter, and Brissett hits Kareem Hunt, he's got an absolute walk-in touchdown. So I have no issue at all with Stefanski, and I think blaming him feels like a massive cop-out to me.
Yeah, no. Another one of which I think of as well is the fourth down on the one of which they said go for the field goal. Jacoby Brissett rolls out to his right as he should do in the situation.
And throws
Nick
it away.
Chubb is, and then throws it away instead of looking back across his body, which throwing across your body is not something that you want to do. But in this situation, it feels almost like you might as well do something. And Nick Chubb is literally just waving his arms out, going, "I've got nobody. Just float it to me, and I'll take it."
To be honest, like when that play was going live, I didn't understand the thought process behind throwing the ball away at all. Even if you're looking at Amari Cooper getting double covered, just throw him the ball.
Even if you run it in yourself.
The worst thing that happens is an interception, and they get it 20 yards for maybe 15 yards further up the field than they would have before. But surely that's worth the risk of the 7 points. Like, if you go in for it on fourth down anyway, the most stupid thing for me to do in that situation is throw it away or, try and run for it when you've got no chance of making it. It just made no sense to me whatsoever, that decision to throw it away.
Yeah, I mean, try and walk it in yourself, throw it into triple coverage. Hell, Lamar Jackson did it yesterday. Throw it to Chubb, throw it to anyone, throw it to yourself. Just as long as you don't give yourself zero chance. Exactly. Yeah, I think that what this showed is that Jacoby Brissett is a 1 to 2 read quarterback, and if it's not there, he has to do something to relieve himself of the responsibility. Whether that be he takes off with his legs, whether that be he throws it away, he is being put in a position where if the first and second read aren't there, and sometimes he doesn't even go to second read, he then absolves himself in one way or another.
Who we all thought he was.
Yeah, of course.
Who we all thought he was.
Yeah, if anything, like you say, Stefanski has actually brought something out of him, through the play calling. So, I mean, there was a lot of feels going into this. And Jen, probably more as a way of rounding this off more than anything else. I think that the main issue here, if you look at that first drive, is you're at 3rd and 1. You've got everything going for you. You've got the strongest quarterback in human history when it comes to sneaking the football. You've got probably the best halfback potentially in NFL history. You've got an offensive line that is constantly heralded as one of the greats. Do you just run the damn ball?
That's pretty much it. Just run it. That's all we needed to do last night, and that's all we've needed to do for these 11 games that are coming up as well. Like, we just need to run the ball. It's as simple as that, but it's clearly not working.
Yeah, just 3rd and 1, just sneak it. 4th and 1, just sneak it. Just no need. Anyway, that's enough of that, because I think if I continue along those lines, I'm going to end up. I'm just going to end up saying the exact same thing, and I'm probably going to say it all season, because Shaun will tell you I was like this all last year. Just it's 3rd and short. I don't care if you've got 20 in the box. Run the damn ball. You can get the yard. So let's go to the second fault now, hurting on defense. Now, I've put hurting on defense there for a reason, of which is that injuries, I think, have definitely impacted this game. Let's take a look, first of all, at the key stats from the Falcons' point of view. Mariota had 19 attempts and completed on 7 of them for 139 yards and an interception. Denzel Ward interception, which was actually very nice. Huntley ends up being the biggest yard carrier, the practice squad second year, with 10 carries for 56 yards and a touchdown. Corradell Patterson then with 38 yards off 9 carries and a touchdown. He's now on IR, by the way. He ended up having an operation this morning on something to do with his knee. The Browns got 1 turnover, 1 sack. We're able to limit them to 33% for 3rd down conversion and 4 tackles for loss. The main thing, and Jen, I'll come to you first on this thing, as I gave you sort of the scraps on the last one, is that, without Garrett and Clowney in there, and also without Anthony Walker Jr. as well, we just seem incredibly flat when it comes to the run defense.
Yeah, I think I was expecting us to be hurt yesterday on defense purely because we didn't have Miles, we didn't have Clowney. They're two of our biggest players. And the fact that they were missing was such a huge, huge miss. I just hopefully one of them is okay next week. If not, then I feel that we're going to struggle again.
Yeah, absolutely. Owain, at one point during the second half, literally, you knew they were going to run it on every single play. And every single play, there was a massive hole. Talk us through your thought process on that, because I know that you would have been tearing your hair out more than most.
Yeah, again, I go back to it. Like I said earlier, they are who we thought they were. In pre-season, we knew that they were going to struggle massively against the run, and it was a case of, can you score enough points for that not to matter? You look, like Jen said, like the two big players out for us absolutely murdered us yesterday. You look at the PFF grades for the starting front four, and here we go. Tommy Togi had 26.8, Jordan Elliott 27.8, Wright 38.9, and Rochelle 53.6. And their run defense grades are even worse. So you're looking at, total annihilation on the line there. And it puts everyone under pressure then. You see Phillips, who, is going to come under a lot of fire on Twitter in the next couple of days, as we see people like Jake Burns tearing the film up and showing, Jacob Phillips' eyes are all over the place, but unfortunately not in the right ones. But what I will say is one of the keys to the game for me the other day was Denzel Ward. Could he bounce back? Could he handle Drake London, a body type that he's not usually good against? What was he going to be like? And he's graded out 86.7, 92.8 in coverage. He was all over Drake London, no separation whatsoever, which was nice to see. Like, you're looking at the positives to take away from the defense. And Denzel Ward, the man you paid 100 and something million for, to play man on man against their best player and take him out of the game. And that's exactly what he did yesterday. So looking forward, that's something he's going to have to do going forward. And, especially if we're going to see Miles and Clowney out for a lot longer, he's going to have to take the number ones away. And he did yesterday.
Yeah, so for anyone that's been living under a rock, obviously Myles Garrett was involved in a car accident last week and has a shoulder sprain and it was a bicep strain, wasn't it? Of which could see he's day to day, according to the team. Likely that he does start next week. Garrett did want to be in the game on Sunday, but was advised against it. According to Adam Schefter of ESPN, has been said that it's an injury that could bother him to be anywhere between 2 and 4 weeks. Jadeveon Clowney is also considered day-to-day as well. He's battling an ankle injury, of which is keeping him off the field for practice at the moment, but they are constantly hopeful that they can get him back. So, yeah, definitely an issue there. Now, in terms of one of the positions of which we aren't going to get sorted anytime soon from an injury recovery is Jacob Phillips. Now, Shaun, when it came to stopping the run defense yesterday, the rushing attack even, should I say, stopping the run defense, that's all we were doing. We had none. Jacob Phillips was nowhere to be seen whatsoever. Is this an issue that is likely to carry on? Or do you see it as something of which, especially after the way that Phillips played against the Steelers, do you see that it was potentially something that was more to do with Woods' scheme?
I think it was a combination yesterday. I think if you look at it, the worst thing that we actually did, ironically, yesterday was Denzel Ward picking that pass off, because it basically said to Arthur Smith, stop throwing the ball. I think Mariota completed one pass after that interception, and they literally, I think that one drive was 10 consecutive runs The biggest issue for me was the big runs were all to the outside. Nobody from the edge kept the run coming back to the interior. All of the big gains seemed to go around the ends. And then, that's obviously further space then for the linebackers to have to cover. For me, I do think we need some help in that position. I do think a veteran presence would be really beneficial. I'm not sure who's out there on the market, to be honest. I haven't really looked at it, but I think to sort of answer your question directly, I think we are going to hurt in that route. It's very young and inexperienced. I know Phillips has been on the roster for a couple of years, but he's hardly played with the injuries that he's had and those type of things. So I do think that Anthony Walker is going to be a big miss. But I think the biggest issue yesterday was across that defensive line. As we said earlier, Owain's read the grades out. Like I say, me and PFF grades, I like the eyeball test myself, and the eyeball test, I could tell you that they all didn't play very well against the run yesterday. And that's obviously backed up by the grading this week. It was very, very obvious that that's where the big issue was. The only thing I would say to that is, when you take the emotion out of it, if you go back and you look, it was effectively 2 drives. It was that big one that it was 10 consecutive runs, and then they had another drive thereafter, which ultimately led to a field goal. After that, the defence actually then stepped up a little bit. I was fuming as much as anything with the decision to punt the ball away on our penultimate drive because I thought, well, we're not going to see the ball again the way that this game's going. Yeah. I thought the Falcons would potentially run the clock out. And you could argue that we got lucky. I suppose you make your own luck, but obviously we managed to sort of hold them from 2nd and 5 to actually kick in, a long field goal of their own to obviously give us a chance to come back at the end. But, it is what it is in terms of it's kind of what we expected, as we've said a few times. Obviously, the main thing in terms of the Garrett situation is that he's alive and well.
Absolutely.
It obviously shows what a huge presence he is. I had a bit of a debate with you guys a couple of weeks back, didn't I, about the influence that he has on the game, and I suppose doesn't always show up in the stat sheet, but when he's not there, it was pretty obvious how big a miss he was yesterday. So the quicker we can get him back, the better. I've got to be honest, I'm usually an optimist. I think that he's going to be more like 2 to 4 weeks. I would be very, very surprised. Let's put it this way. I would be surprised if he suits up on Sunday that he has a huge effect on the game. I'd like to think that he will, but I would imagine it'll almost be like that season a couple of years back when he came back from COVID and he was never quite the same player as he was prior to going out.
Yeah, I think that they'll play him as a 2-down back. I mean, as a 2-down player almost, where they won't put him in for every snap. But I don't think that you can keep Miles away for too long. I don't think he'll let you.
Well, listen, like I say, he's got to be right, though, at the end of the day, is what I'm saying, because in terms of the long-term prognosis and everything, then that's the most important thing, isn't it? The Clowney one's frustrating because that seemed innocuous at the time, and it was almost like he may well be back for the Steelers game on Thursday, and here we are another 10 days later, and it doesn't sound like we've had anything positive to say on the injury front from that one. But yeah, look, they need some help. I mean, to be honest, I think they need some help in the middle of that defensive line anyway. Take the injuries aside for me, I think that's a position that has been really, really under-strengthed anyway. And in terms of the way that they've approached it, I'd like to see him go and add somebody there, but it doesn't look like that's going to happen.
Well, here's a question for everyone. And just a quick yes or no on it before I move on to the final point, because Lee's also patiently waiting for us as well to bring him on to talk about next week's game. Now, Dominican Sue is still on the market at defensive tackle. Obviously, would command a large chunk of budget for now. But defensive tackle doesn't look like it's going to get any better. And it doesn't look like there is anybody better in the market to go after, even from a value perspective. Do you bring him in? Yes or no? I
would, personally. Like I said, I haven't looked at the market, so I couldn't say I prefer somebody else, but I think we need somebody. And if you're telling me that's the best one there, then I would bring in the best one we could.
Yeah, I agree with Shaun there. We need someone there. We do.
I personally wouldn't. I don't think he's the type of guy to defend the run all that well. So I don't think it answers a lot of issues that we have.
I'm currently on the fence personally. I think that it depends as to whether or not we class this as a wasted season as well. because then you got to look at the cap hit as well, and the fact that we're supposed to be trying to play for the future as well. So I think that you got to look at it from that lens as well. Does it provide you with
Sheldon
enough
Richardson
compared
still
to
on
next year? That is an interesting question. Of which, considering that I'm trying to handle the pod itself, I'm probably not in the best position to research that one. But I took a look earlier, and I swear Richardson's picked. Oh, he's a free agent. Oh,
yeah, I would prefer Sheldon back than bringing Sue in.
No, that's fair. Spencer, by the way, our resident commenter, did also put yes. He's also said that 4 games in feels like 17 already based on the emotions experienced so far. You do realise that you're a Browns fan, Spencer. We don't do standard. We don't do standard seasons here. Every season lasts 5 years, and we age just as much. Just very, very quickly, then the last point which I had here was scheming our way towards a loss. And it kind of touches on something of which I was speaking about earlier in terms of, not kicking the freeze, and Kevin Stefanski saying that he's not going to move away from that. He's always going to be aggressive, especially on the first drive, to go after sevens. Then also, Joe Wood's almost abandoning the pass entirely, but keeping a prevent free, of which allowed a busted coverage on probably the most blatant PA action play action pass that you could possibly imagine from inside the 10, of which completely swung the game towards the Falcons towards the end. And then also just our insistence, Shaun, like you say, to run the ball at that point, and then after that punt it away in a position where we're unlikely to get the ball back. Do we shoot ourselves in the foot too much when it comes to game planning and game management?
I think you could probably ask that question of 32 teams in the league. Every time a team loses, there's always somebody that takes the blame as the fall guy. I agree with what Owain said earlier. If it came across that I was blaming Stefanski for yesterday, I certainly wasn't. Like I say, I think is the calls he'd want to have back? Yeah, there's calls every head coach would want to have back every single week. It's always easy to sort of, in hindsight, look back and say we should have done this, we should have done that, we should have done the other. People like Tony Grossi will always be dinosaurs when it comes to American football. And, Grossi would have you kicking field goals, even on third down, just to make sure you didn't turn the ball over. He's that kind of guy, isn't he? So, for me, there's things that we'd all want to do again. We'd all want to do differently. You hope the coaches take it on board and they learn from it. But I think that you've got to stick to your principles. And that's the thing. Just because your results... And I think this was the quote from Grossi, wasn't it? Just because the results aren't necessarily what you want doesn't necessarily mean the principle behind why you made that decision isn't the right thing to do. And obviously that just comes with better execution, better players, etc., etc. But, I think overall, you'd certainly say we've cost ourselves a couple of potential victories this year. But like I say, I'm sure 31 other teams probably feel exactly the same way.
Yeah, just to add on to that, I think Shaun's spot on. And, a game that me and Josh both had our eyes on last night, if you want to watch teams actually really badly coached, go watch teams like the Cardinals and the Panthers, and then you'll see what badly coached teams look like. And they don't play in brown and orange, so we're fine. We're fine without coaches. If you only watching Browns games, I can see where the frustration comes from, but like Shaun said, you look around the league, there's some terribly coached teams out there.
Absolutely. It's just because of the fact that we seem to talk about it every week or every 2 weeks, and it always seems to be even when we win, it's the conservative run down the clock, give it back to them, and hope for the best. Hope we don't get a busted coverage, or that we can pick up the onside kick, or that we don't miss the extra point, we don't concede the busted coverage, we don't concede the onside kick, and we don't go down the field, don't let them go down the field to score the winning touchdown. Not that that's happened to us in a long, long time. Anyway, that's this is my catharsis, folks. I keep telling you this. This is the only way in which I can actually get all the bile out so I can actually enjoy the week. Anyway, we look on to pastures new with week 5 at home to the Los Angeles Chargers. We're just going to take a quick 15-second break while we bring Lee in from the Powder Blue Report, and we will get into the Chargers.
how this all unfolds. Eckler, first and goal. He'll dance, and he'll stop, and they push him in. The Browns push him in. On a 3-yard touchdown, they take the lead right there.
Now, you see, I'm constantly told that I only put in, very Brown-centric highlights when it comes to this. So I wanted to show a highlight of which was positive for both teams, because apparently we wanted the Chargers to score that touchdown. Yeah, exactly. It has to be the most assisted touchdown of all time. So, Lee from the Powder Blue Report, thank you very much for coming on today, mate. Much appreciated. Just very quickly before we get into it, first of all, how are you feeling after yesterday's win? Must have been nice and cathartic. And, how do you feel about the Chargers so far, mate?
Yeah, no, yesterday's win was a nice one, or needed one, after the previous week where we got a deserved hiding from the Jags. Generally speaking, it's been a very up and down season. Obviously, I've been sat in over the past 10 minutes of your pod, and it sounds like we've got quite a lot of parallels between the two teams. I definitely liked what, I know he's not here at the minute, but what Owain was saying about what the online sort of watchers need to kind of do in terms of seeing badly coached teams. I think there's a lot of that knocking around on Chargers Twitter at the moment. Whereas we're not quite as bad as some people will like to make out, I don't think. And I think, like I said, that's one of the parallels that we hold with you. But no, yeah, it was a good win yesterday. It was more comfortable than it appeared. A couple of bad drive, and then obviously the fumble kind of back to back kind of gave Houston 10 points quite easily. But we kept them at arm's reach really quite easily. I thought it was an easier win than it appeared, I would say. But yeah, no, nice one to get one back and get it to 2-2, which, just looking down the standings, there's an awful lot of 2-2 teams, isn't there? Again, ourselves included, all around here.
Yeah, exactly. It's quite nice to be in the Desmond Club at the moment. There's only probably a handful that aren't in the Desmond Club, and the NFL has probably been the closest it's been for a long time. Now, the Chargers are probably one of the few teams that seems to be even deeper in the injury club than the Browns seem to be, especially after last week against the Jags seemed to compound what was already a troubling week going into it, especially with Herbert getting injured, and I think Keenan Allen was also injured, wasn't he? And a couple of others against the
Slater
Chiefs.
And Bosa as well, yeah.
Slater obviously getting that against the Jags as well. How is that looking now? Because I have to admit, I've not watched the game against the Texans just yet, and my bet went around the Chargers game simply because of the injuries. But how are you looking now? Now that you've had that game, and what was potentially a trap game for you as well, injuries notwithstanding.
No, there was a couple of really good pieces of news that came out of the Texans game, actually. The fact that we didn't actually pick up any more injuries, because, as you said, it's kind of been a quite quick attrition of injuries, especially at key players, as you mentioned, Allen, Bosa, Slater. Justin Herbert obviously got his own injury. And that kind of leads me to the second good piece, is that Justin definitely looked affected by the injury against Jacksonville. But if you just kind of dropped me in and said, this is the first game I've watched, I've not heard any NFL news for the whole season, and I looked at Justin Herbert yesterday, I would say he's definitely not injured. He looked back to his best. He was going through his reads. He didn't seem bothered. He wasn't getting rid of the ball too quickly. He wasn't like running around being super mobile, but he just tends to keep that under wraps anyway, even though he's got that in his locker. And he just looked back to normal, 340 yards, no interceptions, no mistakes, really. He just looked back to his best. That's another great piece of news. But yeah, it's the positions that we've kind of got these injuries with, to, and edge and tackle and all the key positions really. And JC Jackson doesn't look great, but he's back. So yeah, we've got some good news coming out of it.
Just not providing me with a lot of optimism here, Lee, at all. This wasn't the conversation I was hoping to have.
It's the Chargers, right? So it can always go downhill.
You say that, but look who you're talking to. It's just, No, jokes aside, obviously. Looking forward then to Sunday's game, what do you think is going to be the key, the key pressure point for this game? What wins and loses this game for the Chargers and or the Browns?
Sure. So from a Chargers point of view, you'll have seen, obviously, throughout the summer, we did everything we could to beef up the run D, which was pretty decent in the first couple of games. But you might have noticed James Robinson putting the dagger in our hearts with a long touchdown run against the Jags, and then the same sort of thing happened with Damien Pearce for the Texans yesterday with a 75-yarder. Now, that doesn't say that the run defense is back to what it was last year. It's not. But obviously now we're coming up against two running backs that can really do a lot of damage, and it's just kind of tightening that up again for this game. And hopefully that the fact that we've had two kind of long ones go for us against us, it means we need to watch the tape and get in there. But if the Browns can really get the running game going and kind of really force us to kind of be at our best in terms of defending the run, I think that's an area that you can get at us, especially because we've seen two long ones go. Obviously, you showed a clip from the shootout of last year. It could be very, very similar again, because as much as the Chargers offense isn't really hitting the heights that it was maybe in that moment last year, it could be the sort of thing that we're forced into, especially if the Browns are able to put up some points, and especially to run as they did, and that they can do. So that's the key point, I think, defensively for the Chargers. And offensively, it's just about kind of getting back to where we were, because it's just not clicking so far. Some of that's to do with Herbert not having a fully healthy kind of season so far. But as I said, he looked back to his best yesterday, and it just needs a few more of the playmakers. Hopefully Allen can come back and give him another boost as well.
Yeah, I do enjoy having Lee on the podcast, because he's very complimentary, especially of Cleveland teams, as a Cavs fan himself.
I do have a bit of vested interest.
Yeah, just a little bit. But, Jacoby Brissett being involved in a shootout, it's probably one...
I was more edging towards Nick Chubb being involved in
a shootout. I get that. Just having Jacoby Brissett in a shootout makes it sound like, if it was in footballing terms, it's like a 2-1 where the keepers are just having an absolute blinder. And it comes down to sudden death. Shaun, I think that you had a question for Lee, did you not?
Yeah, I did, mate. It's probably the opposite side of the ball, really. So I noticed yesterday, I think Austin Eckler, correct me if I'm wrong, mate, first time he found the end zone yesterday, and I know the run game has probably struggled to spring certainly some bigger runs. We obviously yesterday made Caleb Huntley look a little bit like prime Derrick Henry at times yesterday, which is a little bit concerning. And we were all just lamenting how poor our run defense has been.
Yeah.
Obviously, everybody looks at the Chargers, thinks big stuff through the air with Herbert and what a revelation he's been, etc. But how much of a help is it, particularly with Herbert at the moment, for you guys to actually get this run game going? Because I think a couple of years ago, Eckler looked like potentially, sort of a real sort of top 10 back in the league. He's obviously lost his way with injuries, but obviously for your point of view, good to see him back yesterday. For our point of view, what do we need to do in terms of keeping him contained?
Well, as a runner, Eckler's still not really getting going. He did a lot of his damage in the previous games through the pass, and obviously that's not something that's been completely alien. The Texans' run defense wasn't very good, so it kind of maybe can say that maybe he overperformed in yesterday's game because of that. But yeah, you've got 3 touchdowns, and did have his best running game of the season so far. The problem, I think, with the Chargers' run game isn't really centered around Eckler. It's the fact that we've got Sony Michel, who just doesn't seem to be quite there, and the coach's reluctance to get Josh Kelly involved, who honestly seems like the best running back that we've got. Obviously, you've got Austin, who's the best all-round back, of course, but Josh Kelly just seems to be able to have the most juice, but he's just not being used nearly enough for my liking, and a lot of Chargers fans like him. So it's kind of just getting those guys kind of in the right order, I would say, and allowing Austin to be the kind of one who spells the main back. And as much as you don't want Kelly to be your main back, I guess, but because he's not high quality back, but you want him to kind of take the lion's share of the touches on the ground and allow Austin to be more of a complementary piece and not come in when he's completely winded, I guess. So it's kind of just the coaches needs to kind of sort that out and get that hierarchy kind of, like I say, fleshed out really and get into a flow of it.
Yes, Lee, I'll jump in here. So for us, obviously on offense, we've seen Amari Cooper go off a fair amount of times this season already. He sort of got shut down for us this week against AJ Terrell. So just looking at the Chargers cornerbacks, who takes Amari Cooper for the majority of this game, and how confident are you with that player?
It's kind of a two-tiered answer that I'm going to give you, because the conventional wisdom would say it with JC Jackson, considering that he's probably the quote-unquote best cornerback on the roster, and obviously we're paying him a lot of money to be that number one corner. However, he's had ankle surgery when he's come back in the past couple of games. He's not looked great. And, you're going up against Brandon Cooks, who, has not been a terrible player throughout his NFL career, but he's not, up in the top echelons of the wide receiver kind of hierarchy in the NFL. But JC Jackson didn't look great. So I would actually kind of defer to my kind of second part of my answer here in the fact that Asante Samuel has looked absolutely brilliant to start the season and quickly becoming, in the hearts and minds of a lot of Chargers fans, the best cornerback on the roster. However, does his skill set match up with the skill set of Amari Cooper? I'd imagine that Amari Cooper's got a fair bit of height difference over him, so he's kind of got that natural advantage just through that. But, you can probably stay with him for the speed. I personally would like to see Samuel covering him more often than not. I don't know whether he'll travel with him, but I would like to see that. But the Chargers coaching staff have got to kind of get Jackson going, considering, like I said, all the money that they've spent on him and the kind of, the prestige that he's come with. So it'll probably be Jackson, but, it kind of makes me nervous as a Chargers fan thinking, he's got to get right. And obviously, like you say, Cooper's been playing quite well so far this season.
Nice one. Lee, before we let you go, mate, can't let you go without a prediction. So cards on the table. No money on the table, though. We don't do that here. Give us... yeah, we'll save that for the WhatsApp group, mate. Don't worry about that. Give us your scoreline prediction.
Scoreline prediction. Okay, so I don't think it's going to be as high scoring as what it was last year, where both teams got over 40 points. But I don't think it's going to be low scoring either. I think there's going to be quite a few points scored. I'm going to go for a tight one, as it probably could be with these two. I think they're a pretty well matched team, and the teams, and they're not playing their best football. I'm going to go for something along the lines of 27-24 to the Chargers.
I think that's quite fair. I think you'll see later on that there's quite joined up thinking there, but we'll save that as a rather negative teaser for later on. Lee, we'll let you go, mate. Thank you very much for that. If you need one of us on for your show later on in the week, do let us know, mate.
Absolutely.
And,
thanks for having me, guys.
All the best. No worries. All the best for Sunday, but obviously don't have too much fun. That's all we ask on this show. Nice one.
All right, guys.
Cheers, mate. You take care. Bye. Brilliant. So that was Lee from the Powder Blue Report. If you've got any Chargers mates, first of all, why aren't they Browns fans? But second of all, if they are truly going to remain Chargers fans, and they should definitely be listening to the Powder Blue Report. Lee does turn out some fantastic stuff, all part of the Full10Yards Network, as always. Let's talk about the keys to the game ourselves, guys, before we move on to our own predictions. So the first point of which we've got here, I believe that this one was from you, Owain, if I'm reading it correctly, that the pass rush is going to be all important, and Garrett and Clowney being back being a must.
Yeah, I think we all know, and we all realise after that last game, that if Garrett and Clowney aren't playing, then we're in real trouble with the pass rush. We didn't get Mariota quite well at all, really. I think Storm Norton's playing left tackle for them after Rashawn Slater has gone down for a while. So if Garrett can make his way to the field, then you've got to fancy him against that, even if they chip him as well. So that's the most important thing for me, because if you give Justin Herbert a lot of time, then he is gonna, slice us apart. So got to get more pass rush. I can't remember all that much of us actually blitzing in that last game against the Falcons. So, even if we need to blitz Phillips and JOK or Taki as well, you've got to find ways to get pressure on Herbert, or otherwise he is going to shred us to pieces.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Shaun, I believe that this one was yours, was it not, Bud, of Red Zone offense?
Yeah, definitely. We've talked about it, haven't we, in terms of the review. It obviously just needs to sharpen up. We can't leave as many points on the board. I know Lee's just said there he doesn't expect it to be in the 40s. I don't think anybody will be expecting a 40-something apiece kind of game, but certainly we can't afford to leave points on the field this week. You would expect that we would have to score pretty consistently. It's a difficult thing to do, I suppose, in terms of a podcast on a Monday without knowing what the injury report's going to be. It could, dramatically change this, as just been alluded to. But certainly needs to be a lot crisper, executed a lot better. Trust the field goal unit to go out there and get you 3 points if that's the right thing to do. So I'll be certainly looking to see a big improvement in there. I've just been looking, the Chargers ranked middle of the pack in terms of red zone defense, allowing a touchdown 53% of the time that teams get down there. So we really do need to make sure that we take advantage if we get into those situations.
Yeah, absolutely. That's something which I'll be screaming at for sure. This one is Jen's being able to scheme a full game and get the scheming on point. Jen, take that one away.
We just need to do the play calling correct. I don't know. I have nothing against Kevin Stefanski at all. I do think he's a good coach. Mainly Joe Woods. I just feel like he needs to sort his stuff out. The secondary mainly need to speak to each other and make sure they are playing correctly, because that is our big default at the minute.
Yeah. In fact, actually, I haven't asked you about that yet. I thought that Grant Delpit had a much better game actually on Sunday, considering the limited amount of balls that went through to him. Were you much happier with that yesterday?
Yeah, it's hard to talk about Delphi at the minute because I feel like he's a good player, but at the minute he's not playing the way he used to. Whether it's his injury that's niggling him, whether it's Joe Wood's play calling, I don't know. But he did have a good game yesterday. I will give him that one.
Yeah, put it this way: Delpit and Ward were both in my crosshairs going into yesterday, and I thought that both of them did all right. The PFF rating might not say the same for Delpit. I don't know. I'm just looking at Owain's little screen at the moment. I'm seeing a shift from side to side, so I'm going to class that as it was okay.
Yeah, it's one of the better ones on our defense. I think it was in the range of 65. So okay.
Yeah, above average. We'll take that. And then the last one from me, and this one kind of alludes to Shaun's earlier point, and that's take the points. Kevin, I know that you want 7 every time. I get it. When you're down in the 5, you want to punch it in. But if you don't want to QB sneak it with the best QB sneaker on the planet ever, then you're going to have to pay the piper and just kick the damn 3. Please, Cade can kick him. I promise you he can. Just take the 3, keep the momentum throughout as well. The Browns do the worst in the league, I find, at keeping momentum going. We stop ourselves in our tracks far too often. You can't do that against a team like the Chargers. They will take what you give them and they will take it to shreds. If Marcus Mariota and the Atlanta Falcons can do it, Justin Herbert and the Los Angeles Chargers will do it and leave you just on the field with nothing but your pants down. So for the love of God, take the points, take what you can and move on.
Yeah, I think just on that, mate, just before you flash the scores up as well, I know that the time has been against us in the 2 instances that it's happened, but you've seen when the Browns are actually playing from behind. One thing I was really worried about yesterday, and they did it, was they completely abandoned the run once we got down to that 2-minute drive, which I knew was going to happen because it always does. But the Falcons hadn't looked like they could stop Hunt or Chubb the entire second half either. This is an offense built to play from. Yeah, it's an offense built to play from in front. So, like I say, we've both alluded to it, haven't we? Just let's get ourselves in front and try and control the game the best we can.
Yeah, I think that one touches upon the scheming a full game as well.
Yeah,
the idea, as much as the defense was more your point, Jen, I think that the offense definitely needs to look at their fourth quarters as well, in that, don't abandon the thing that actually makes your offense work. It might be, it might only be 2 minutes left and you might need to get down there, but all it takes is one good pass to get you there, and then the rest is just on the ground. To get to the 40-yard line is not a insurmountable task from 2 minutes to go. So, yeah, I think that the scheming is definitely something which the offense needs to look at in those situations. And there was me thinking after the Carolina game that we had that sort of thing down pat. More for me. Right. I do apologize to listeners last week because we spoke about the game and then didn't actually give our predictions whatsoever. Owain was the only one that ended up hitting. He ended up reverse jinxing the Browns and ended up coming out kind of right with the Falcons victory. I think that it was by 5, wasn't it, Owain, of which you'd said last time. We'll go through the predictions before we go through the current NFL Pick'em table. Owain, you've got yourself down here as 27-20 to the Chargers. Your justification, please.
I just don't think we, built at the moment to be able to hang with these. I think, if we have to get off to a good start to even, stick in the game. Shaun mentioned it then. The roster is very much a roster to play from in front. So, if we don't start well, then I think we end up going down a couple of scores and then chasing our tails from there. But, I think this is going to be the first proper roster we've played against, and I personally think that we are average, and I think that that's going to very much come out in these next few. I hope so hard that I'm wrong, but that's just my opinion on it.
Yeah, now usually this would be the part of the show where I say, oh, too negative, here we go again, all the rest of it. But actually, I'm drinking your Kool-Aid this time round. I've actually gone for the exact same score. It's what I was thinking before you'd answered my my question earlier on. I think that actually it will come down to the fact that we're going to try and take time off. We're going to try and use the run game. We'll get a couple of touchdowns. We won't get the drives of which we want all the way through. We'll have to settle for threes. The Chargers will end up pulling away by about the middle of the third quarter, and it will seem almost routine, even though there'll still be the chance to win it towards the end. Brissett will probably throw his now customary last throw pick to end things again. I'm starting to sound really jaded. It's only week 5. Spencer, I know you said earlier it felt like a year. It feels like 5 years, mate, if I'm being perfectly honest with you. And I do believe, Jen's actually gone for a little better. And this one actually, I believe, was exactly what Lee was on about earlier, 25-27 Chargers. Jen, is it kind of the same as what we've been discussing? I mean, 25 is quite a few against this Chargers D as well.
Yeah, I feel like the run game's going to be there, but I feel like, again, Kevin's not going to use Cage. He's just not going to want to hit it from 50 yards, and we all know he can do that. Maybe he'll use him this week. Who knows? We'll just have to wait and see.
I'd prefer that. I'd like that. Shaun, give us some optimism, mate. 2017 Browns.
Yeah, I obviously didn't get the memo, did I? I thought this was the Believeland Brits podcast. We're supposed to, be...
Hey, we can believe in negativity, mate. We can believe that we can't get there.
Look, I think for me, these games are all going to be close. We've just said with Lee, so many teams are 2-2. If we'd have done this podcast a week ago, the Chargers were coming off a 38-10 defeat to the Jags, and I'm sure everybody's confidence would have been slightly different compared to what it is this week because we're coming in off the back of a loss. I don't think the Chargers have played up to probably their pre-season expectations to this point. They are still carrying some injuries. I do think that the injury report is going to be massive for this, in as much as if we have our defensive ends back, then I'm relatively confident in that prediction. If we don't have either of the defensive ends back, I think we could be in for another long afternoon defensively. But for me, I think it's a game that, again, I think will be close. I don't think this is a team that is going to get blown out by many people in terms of the Browns. I just don't think we're built that way. I think we are well coached. As much as there's frustrations every week, I think we are relatively well coached. The run game will keep us competitive. And I think that ultimately this will again probably come down to one score. You've all got it as a one-score game, so I don't think anybody's sitting here expecting it's going to be anything other than another tight one. I just hope that this is a week that we turn it around. And I think I said last week on the pod, I think Kevin Stefanski is something like 11-3 after a defeat. So he's got a very, very good record of course correcting and putting things right. So hopefully, with a full week to prepare back at home, it could be a good one. Certainly a game I'm looking forward to there. Yeah,
put it this way, mate. We all hope you're right.
Of course.
We absolutely all hope you're right. And I'd love a 2017 nail biter personally. I could do with a heart attack. So, that works for me, mate. I'm happy to miss work on the Monday. It's, little quick hospital visit, all good as long as we get the win. We won't be doing our NFL pick'ems this week simply because I don't think that there's enough games to warrant actually picking it through. Obviously, there's a full slate, but they just seem so. I think there's only like 2 or 3 that are even slightly contentious. It's one of those slates which I think will go down as one of the more boring ones going forward. But to give people a little hint as to how the pick'ems are going currently, Shaun is still the no, I can't get that right, Owain. I know you're giggling at me. I don't care. Look, they're not even a Browns fan according to according to the Cleveland Browns official line. So I'm wondering whether or not to throw out their record here. Now they've got 45 points. They're about 5th in the country. And then myself in second place with 40 points. Owain is in 4th with 37 points. That's commendable. You've brought yourself right at the table there. You've gone 1 off me this week. 9 points instead of my 10. Shaun also 9 instead of 10. You're on 36 points in 7th currently. Not bad at all. Yeah, I know where you guys went wrong. You both went Colts, didn't you, instead of Titans?
Potentially, yeah.
No, I went with the Titan. I was probably still too high on that Jags train. That's probably where I went wrong.
Oh,
I did go Eagles.
Okay, there we go. So Shaun was drinking some form of drug-filled juice there that the Jags were providing, because there was no way they were beating the Eagles. I don't care as to what score they went out to in the first half. And
Commanders was my mistake this week.
You picked that. Yeah, that's.
I put money on them to win as well. Wasn't greatly pleased with Carson Wentz last night.
Now, I did tell you last week to bet responsibly, Owain, and obviously you didn't. Betting on the Commanders. I mean, look, I can take the L on the Jags chat, but betting the Commanders to win this season just seems like throwing your money down the toilet. I have to admit, I've come off a pretty good week myself when it comes to that. I won 550 quid last night thanks to the Packers getting that overtime boot.
Oh, I bet there was some nerves.
Oh, just a bit, mate. Just a bit. Especially when I thought the flipping Bailey Zappa was going to go all the way down and win it for them in regulation. I tell you something. I had to rely on the Cardinals as well. As you well know, having to rely on the Cardinals, I was not happy with Kyler Murray displaying just how terrible a quarterback he can be.
We said it last week, though. The Cards were like, I think, what was it, -1 being the biggest steal ever. I don't know how that line ended up at -1. And to be fair, the game did look a little bit sketchy for a long time, but they've ended up winning by 10. The Panthers stink, so I don't know how that line ended up as plus and -1 there.
Yeah, I was very happy to get +4 on the Cardinals, so I was very happy come quarter 4, put it that way. We do actually have some time, folks, for just a little quick section of Barking Mad this week, believe it or not. And I want to talk about Elfgate. I feel like this has been a long time coming. I've not been able to actually discuss this for weeks. It's all that anybody in the national media wants to talk about currently when it comes to, especially the Browns at home. It was the only thing of which Thursday Night Football really wanted to delve into. I think it's probably the only way in which the national media feels it can talk about the Browns in any sort of levity with the Watson saga, etc., going on at the moment. Now, the entire world hates the angry elf being on the center of the field. I don't know about you guys, but I bloody love it. I absolutely love it. I'm seeing a lot of nodding face. I'm seeing Shaun look almost longingly into the distance, as if to say maybe not. But there was a poll which was put on Twitter a while back, which I thought was quite good, about how if the Browns were to move away from the helmet as their primary logo, which of the other logos in Brown's existence, because this is one of the things that national media also hates as well, is the fact that we've got loads of different, insignias, etc., and modifiers of which showcase the Browns. So the 4 of which were on offer were the standard elf, the now modified stiff arm elf, the dog pound dog. Now, this isn't the rebranded one. This is the original one where it actually looks like a dog. And the stripes. So like the stripe flag. So I'm actually putting myself in stiff arm elf corner here. I'd love that as the primary logo personally. I think it would just be so different and definitely something I could get behind. But I tell you what, we'll do it as a quick fire 2 questions to answer. 1, do you like the stiff arm on the in the center of the field and just causing all this drama? And second of all, which one would you pick out of those if it was to replace the helmet? Jen, seeing as you've nicely added some audio there with a cuff, I'll let you go first. It allowed the seg. It allowed the segue.
No, I'd go with the stiff arm elf as well. And I actually do love the elf on the field as well. I think it's a great addition.
Fantastic. Owain, I saw you nodding away when I was giving my my diatribe, so I assume that you're in my corner.
To be honest, there's 3 logos there that I'd be perfectly happy with. If they modernized the standing up elf, I like that one. I would probably take the stiff arm one, but the dog is nice as well. Bottom right is too boring, like the helmet is. I think they should get rid of that helmet ASAP as the primary. So, I'd be happy with 3 of them. As for the elf on the field, I love it, and I love that everyone's moaning about it as well. It makes it even nicer.
Yeah, absolutely. Shaun, are you on board? Are you going to be pissing on this elf's parade?
No, I'm not pissing on his parade, mate. At the end of the day, he went to the fans voted for it. I've got no issue with it, to be honest. I honestly couldn't care less. And to be honest, I'd swap all of them for a win. So I don't really care. To be honest. They can put whatever they want on the field if we win. Simple as that.
Look, you're talking to someone that does marketing and branding for a living. You can't get me away from this chat. This chat will remain until the logo is changed. at least one episode a year is going to be dedicated to this until they eventually do it, which I actually think they will angle towards at some point. I feel like it's getting there. Yeah. I feel like too much has been going on to get there.
Yeah, I think this is a concerted effort to get the elf more involved in merchandise and more involved in game day. So I do think that they may be transitioning towards it, and I hope they are, because I hate the helmet.
Yeah, and as one final thing as well, my folks have just come back from Florida, and I made a homage order. They're based out in Columbus, and I tell you what, for anyone that's watching on the video,
I know where this is going, and I like it.
Yeah, so you know exactly where this is going. Give me 1 sec.
Deserve to go full screen for this.
Oh, you want me to go full screen?
Yeah, you deserve to. Yeah.
Oh, will it even let me? That is the question. Yes, it will. There we go. Oh, look at that beauty.
Yeah.
Oh, for those of you who are on audio only, just search for homage orange elf hoodie or something like that. That's all that you'll need to go for. And I have to admit, it is the softest, nicest thing. Homage aren't paying me anything to say that. I'm just giving you my complete thoughts there. It's a finger beauty. It cost a fair penny, especially with the dollar being where it's at the moment, but it's worth every penny.
And can we just give a quick shout out to the Browns to just release the Nike ones? Everyone and their mothers will buy that.
I need it.
You would make so much money from it. It makes no sense not to release it. Just release them, please.
Right. A tip for you and anyone listening. Follow the Pro Shop on Twitter, because they do release them every now and then. They do it as almost like drops. Okay. They dropped it during the off season. Now I was looking at this anecdotally because I was looking for a Garrett jersey whilst my folks were away to, go and pick that up. But unfortunately, they didn't have one. But yeah, apparently they do drops like that every now and then. I think that it's because of the fact that it's equipment staff stuff first. But they're changing it to the elf at some point anyway. It's going to happen. It'll be fine. It'll be fine. Folks, thanks for engaging with a bit of barking mad with us towards the end. I definitely feel like I'm barking hoarse, if not barking mad anyway. My voice is about to go. If you want to hear it go even further, listen to the Full 10 Yards NFL podcast, of which will be uploaded overnight. I promise you I won't have a voice by the end of it. If I do, then Shaun isn't asking me enough. But for now, Shaun, Owain, Jen, thank you very much for joining me on what has been and the word is going to continue to be cathartic over the course of the season, I find. We will see you here again next week to review the Chargers and look ahead to the Patriots. And we will have someone from the Patriots Touchback podcast to preview that with us. But for now, go Browns.